Hey guys, I'm Sydney Mary, and this is Retired College Athletes, a platform designed to inspire and inform current and former athletes through stories and advice from retired college athletes. Today, we're chatting all about a realistic transition out of sport, specifically my transition out of sport, because I think oftentimes people are like, it's okay, it just takes time, it'll get better, but like, what does that actually mean? So I'm gonna walk through my transition out of sport year by year to today to talk to you about how various aspects of my life have changed since I stopped playing basketball. So let's go ahead and jump in. All right, guys, so I stopped playing basketball in 2017. March of 2017 was my last collegiate game. I was playing at the University of Kansas at that time, and since then, I have not played competitively or even pickup at all since then. And I have talked about how my love for my sport changed significantly after just stopping, and over the years it's changed. And so I'll link that video above so you guys can get some context on me and why I think my relationship with basketball changed so much. But with that said, I'm going to walk through each year and talk about how various things in my life changed, from fitness to my mental health, work, and all of those things, just so you can kind of get a good idea of if you're kind of new to this transition, if you just finished your sport, maybe how long it could take you to kind of start feeling normal again. Or if you're pretty far into your transition, you can be like, yeah, that's about right. Like, it took me that long to feel sane in this aspect of my life again. So in 2017, I was pretty ready to be done with my career for a lot of reasons. I have a video on a bit of why, so I will link that above, but I was ready to be done. I had played basketball since I was 7 at that point, and at that point in time, I don't know exactly how old I was, but definitely my 20s, and I was tired. I was tired. It had taken a lot from me. It had also given me so much, but I was ready to do other things. I think I was always a person who knew I was so much more than a basketball player, and a lot of people knew me as Sydney, the basketball player only. And so I was ready to kind of explore other identities in my life, but also remain fit. That was super important to me. And so one thing in particular, I remember writing a blog post on how I'm so ready for this transition, all this stuff. Like, I have my workout plan ready, I have everything ready. And looking back, I'm like, man, I was naive. Not because I didn't think I was ready, but because what I thought was ready was actually quite unhealthy. If I can find the blog post, I will link it down below, or put it on a slide or something like that so you guys can read it and just kind of get an idea of where my head was at. But I just thought that, like, I didn't want to be the athlete who would let herself go. So I had this plan to continue to stay fit. But it was actually pretty unhealthy. Of course, when you stop your sport, you're not going to have lift every other day like you usually would, or practice every day, or conditioning. Like, those are not carved out for you. You have to go find time for that yourself. I think we all get that. And I was going to do that, but the way I was going to go about it was not the best, as I realize now looking back on it. So I just tried to recreate my college athletic workouts, which in theory is not a bad thing. Like, you've gone through workout, like, training blocks in the weight room, like, you know how to put together a workout for yourself for the most part. It was the amount of time I was putting into it. I would go to the gym early in the morning because, you know, that was not abnormal for me at that point in time. I had done that for at least 4 years of my life. And I went and I would work out for like 2 hours. I'd do an hour-ish of cardio, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. And then I'd do an hour-ish of like strength training every day. Like, let's take a minute and think about that. How toxic? How toxic? Like, I didn't even do that when I was a college athlete. So why I thought every day of both of those things would make sense is problematic. Like, I don't understand. The other thing is that it wouldn't stop there. So I'd do that. I'd like get dressed, go to class, and then head to a bar workout. So 2 hours in the morning. 2 hours in the morning of strength and conditioning as well. Yeah, strength and conditioning, and then like actual conditioning. And then we're going to a bar class. So to me, I'm like, bar shouldn't be too hard. Like, it's something completely different. I get a chance to challenge myself in a different way, which it was challenging because I'm a basketball player. I'm not a ballerina. I'm not a dancer. So those mini movements, they'll get you. Trust me. Grandma in the corner was better than me. But I was enjoying it. So that's hour number 3, because those classes were at least 45 minutes, so we'll just round up and say it was an hour. All right, so I'd come back, do a little bit of studying, because I was done with class at that point, and then I'd go to a yoga class at night. Okay, so at this point in time, no matter how hard or not hard the yoga class was, whether it was hot yoga or, you know, just a really easy Zen class, it doesn't matter. That's now 4 hours of training, and I would do that almost every day. Like, I really don't think I took an off day from any of that. How problematic. How problematic. I really thought that, like, that was my way to continue to stay in shape. And don't get me wrong, I was definitely in shape. And people would notice, like my old coaches would say, oh my gosh, like, yeah, you look so fit, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, thanks. On top of that, I'm not really eating. Problematic. I'm gonna link our video with Katie Spada. She's a registered dietitian who focuses on fueling former athletes above. She's awesome. I've had her on the podcast as well as kind of converted that podcast into a YouTube video, and hopefully you guys will find this helpful because we're talking all about this type of stuff in that video. So definitely check that out when you get a chance. All in all, when I look in that year, specifically 2017, I was way too obsessed with fitness because I didn't want to look unfit or not fit or not like my typical self that I've had for the past, I don't know, 4-ish years of my life being in college. I was super scared to let that version of myself go. And as I transitioned from college back home, because I did a lot of that training while I was still in college finishing up classes, that started to change. And I remember being very scared about like, am I eating too much? Or the fact that my body was changing because now, like, it's not a college athlete anymore. It can go through a second puberty, and being like, I'm barely eating and I'm working out all the time. Why is my body changing? Like, just being angry. I'm like, my jeans don't fit. Am I gaining weight? Get on the scale. Haven't gained weight at all. It's just that now I'm getting hips because puberty again, you know? And I was like, what is wrong with me? It was such a tumultuous year for fitness because I was like, nothing's making sense. I'm trying so hard to stay the same and change is happening, and that's not what I signed up for. All right, so that was the fitness side of it. But let's talk about like work. So now I am out of school and I need to get a job. Well, I was in the process of trying to find work. I originally thought I was going to move to Dallas to work a job, but I went like home shopping with my mom in terms of like, what apartment am I gonna live in? And I quickly realized, like, I don't want to do this job. I don't want to live in this city. I don't think I'll be making enough money. And I had the wherewithal to say no to that job. I wouldn't say it was all me. My parents were like, you should be making more money than that. And they were like, you should come home and try and figure something out. And so I did. And I'm in a privileged position to where my parents would take me back into their home. I know not everyone has that opportunity, so I do want to call it out there. Like, that is definitely a privilege that I had. But I did go back home and I ended up getting an internship near where my mom worked, and that is how I kind of worked my way into a job. It was not in an industry that I cared too much about. I studied journalism, and I was not working in journalism. I was in marketing for a company that does nothing close to journalism, and that was my introduction into the working world. That was kind of jarring because I think oftentimes you look at other classmates that have their dream job kind of coming out of college, or they're going to be paid a lot. Maybe they're doing investment banking in New York. Like, I had dreams for myself. I wanted to move away and do other things and be working in industries I care about. And I was at home. I wasn't working in an industry I cared about. And I was just kind of like, this is really confusing. Like, this is not the dream I was sold. This doesn't make sense. And then to add to that, I was in counseling. I was in heavy counseling because I was trying to like recover from my college experience. And when I say recover, I literally mean recover because there were so many things that happened in college athletics that I just needed to talk through and work through with a counselor. And so I was in that really heavy, and that was really helpful. And that definitely carried into the next year, which was 2018. So let's go ahead and get into that. So for the most part, my mental health and how I was handling it with counseling stayed about the same when I was in 2018. So from 2017 to 2018, it was about the same. Was still seeing counselors. I think I was doing a lot of counselor shopping, which I highly recommend. If you go seek out a counselor and they don't work for you, don't get discouraged. Just continue to counselor shop. It's one of those things where eventually you'll hit somebody who does work for you, but please don't get discouraged. Seek the help that you need because you deserve it. And sometimes it just takes a little extra effort. But with that said, my mental health stayed stable, but I was definitely in counseling. In terms of work, I was still working at a job that I didn't really care too much for. It was paying bills. It was giving me flexibility. It was my introduction into the working world. So wasn't my dream job by any stretch of the imagination, just was kind of doing what people were saying I need to do as an adult, which was work. So that's what I was doing. And then on top of that, halfway through that year, I got let go. And it wasn't because I wasn't doing a good job. It was like our company did a restructuring and my whole department kind of got wiped. And I was part of that. And that was an eye-opening experience for me because at that time I was 22 and I'm like, this is so confusing. Like, I didn't do anything wrong and now I'm out of work. Like, it was already hard enough to find this job. how am I going to go about finding another job? It was a lot to handle at 22. Fortunately, I was at home, and like I said, that is a huge privilege. I could figure this out at home, and I needed to actually be home because I was jobless for about 6 to 8 months. So just a really frustrating time. I'm just trying to figure things out. And I ended up at the end of that year, 2018, getting another job in an industry that I, again, was not really prepared to be in. I'm a journalist at heart, and I was not in journalism at all, but it was definitely a job that was ideal, it was close to home, would pay the bills and all of that good stuff. So that was the job section of it. And I just wanted to point that out because now I work in an industry that I care about. It's an industry that I actually was studied. So, that's huge for me. But it wasn't a straight line. And so for those of you guys who are in work that you just are not passionate about, it's okay, like it happens. And I think the biggest piece of advice I can give you is to pick out the skills that you will need to carry on to the rest of like the things that you want to do. So even if the job isn't what you want, like there are tangible skills that you will need in anything that you go on to do, whether it's in the line of work that you want to work in or anything. And so just really hone in on those things, try and grow in those things so that you can translate that over to your resume for the next job that matches what you want to do. All right, so we've gone through mental health for 2018. We've gone through work. Let's get to the juicy part, the workouts. So to this point, I still have not touched the basketball. I want nothing to do with basketball. I want to train and like be fit, but I want nothing to do with basketball. And in this year, this is when my body was like, you're done. You're done.
You're done. You're done.
If you guys watch TikTok, you know what I'm talking about. But my body was like, you're done. And she was shutting down. She was like, you are barely eating. You train too much. You don't care for me. So I'm done here. And my metabolism plummeted. She was gone. My energy gone. And I ended up going to the doctor to get a bunch of blood work done. And that's when I realized that my cortisol levels were so low. And that is problematic because cortisol is never low. It's never low. It's usually, middle or higher. And the only reason why it drops that low is because I had been stressed or it had been so high for so long that it was like giving out on me. How problematic. So I had to work through healing that. That was really interesting. It actually caused me to do everything that I was very scared about. I had to eat. I had to eat and I had to work out less or not work out at all. And so I had to go through this like 2 to 3 month period where I didn't work out. And I'm sitting here like, what do I do? Like here for the past year, I've done nothing but nonstop hit killer workouts. And now you're telling me to sit down. The other part of it is like I had to eat and they're like, please eat all the healthy fats. And I'm like, what are you trying to do to me? What are you trying to do to me? And I had to eat and I did heal my body. It took some time. I remember just being extremely inflamed. My body was not happy with me and slowly but surely the inflammation was going down. Appetite was coming back, metabolism was going up, but it was not a comfortable time period because I was feeling better. I was actually physically healthier, but I didn't look as healthy as I wanted to be. It was so frustrating. So that was that season of life in 2018. Just a huge learning curve. Learning to respect my body again, or maybe for the first time, was really hard. And so that was 2018. Let's go into 2019. So in 2019, fitness looked a lot different than it had in the past. I was working out, but it wasn't super consistent. I think mainly because my body was tired, so it was still kind of healing. But also, I spent a lot of the year working out at home, so doing Nike Training app, thanks to them. And then kind of halfway through transitioning back into a gym because I actually really enjoy weightlifting. And then getting a few shots up throughout the year. So I wouldn't say I got a lot, like let's be really honest here. I think I shot like maybe 3 or 4 times that year. But that was a huge change for me because I had gone at least 2 years without shooting. And I think this is a good example of, I always say it takes about 2 years to start to feel normal after your college sport. And this is a great example of that. Like, it took me 2 years to even want to touch a basketball. I remember my brother was playing, I have a younger brother, and I would go to his games, and that was like the only basketball I'd watch. And I would watch it because he's my brother, right? But it's just like, it takes some time. And so in this year out of college, this is when I was finally like, okay, let me see if can, can get this love back from my sport. And I have to say, when I went to go shoot, shot felt a little off, but it felt good. And dribbling was like, I was like, man, was I ever an athlete? Like, I didn't look too good, but no one saw it. I was in my parents' driveway just shooting, and it just kind of felt good to get back in the rhythm. And over time, it all started to come back, which was kind of nice. After a lot of my life being basketball, it's nice to know that like that skill is probably not going anywhere. It could get rusty, but you can always dust the rust off. In terms of work, I was starting to get pretty frustrated at work just because I think it was more one of those things where I'm thinking like, this is not the dream I was sold. Again, I thought that I would be working in a different industry. I thought I'd really be enjoying work. Like, that was when adulting really started to set in, and I was realizing like, it's not that fun. It's not that fun. I'm not having a good time. So that's kind of what it felt like. And I still had to do the job. Like, I think that's the hardest thing about, in my opinion, adulting. And I feel like maybe I'm just sensitive to like doing things I don't want to do, and not having the best attitude about it. But that was really hard. Like, that was really hard to just like have to get up and do something I don't care so much about. And I think a lot of student athletes kind of get blindsided by the responsibility of adulting, because it just can be a lot. Like, it's not like your sport. It wasn't like you have always loved to do whatever you're doing. Sometimes you're in a job that you just don't care so much about, and you have to do it. And so that was my reality for 2019. My workouts were, it looked a lot different. Work was a little challenging in the sense of like the wantingness and willingness to be there and doing the job. Always doing a good job, but just not really wanting to be there. And then counseling, was definitely in counseling, but I was kind of getting fatigued with it, because at this point I had been in counseling for so long, like all throughout my college career to now. It was one of those things where it was like, it felt like I just needed to talk about my day with somebody rather than like actually get advice, because at this point I feel like I knew what they were gonna tell me, like the ways to think through things and things like that. And so I was getting really tired of counseling. And if you're at that point, just wait. 2020 things changed for me, and I'll talk about that now. So in 2020, a lot changed. We were in a whole panoramic situation, pandemic, and I think a lot of people's mental health took a turn for not the best. For me, I would say it was about the same. And I continued with counseling. I think I had a lot more new things to talk about since things were changing so much. Also, counseling had shifted a lot more from talking about basketball and how it affected me to talking about work and how I'm not loving it, and like balancing just being a young adult and also work and things like that. So that's kind of what we were discussing in counseling. But on top of that, halfway through the year, or a little over halfway through the year, I got a new job. And I was finally in an industry I cared about. It was so exciting and I loved it. But what I think I realized is that the industry that I love is like fast paced, and it's really like a hard industry to be in the sense of like deadlines, and meeting expectations. And it's like resembles college sports a lot, but it was just really intense. And I realized at that point in time, I didn't know how to deal with that. So that's when I went to go see a psychiatrist for the first time. And that was a really hard decision for me, because I realized that like no amount of counseling is going to change what is happening with me. I'm extremely anxious and I need help. And so that's when I went to go see a psychiatrist and actually got on a little bit of medication that would help me just like ease my mind. Like, I just needed to ease my mind, and that was really helpful to me. And so for those of you guys who are on the fence about going to see a psychiatrist, because if you go see a psychiatrist, they're going to give you medicine, just consider it. I think now, being a year into that, I realize, and even my psychiatrist has told me, that like my issues were not going to fix themselves. I had chemicals in my brain that were low and they needed to become higher, and like me wanting them to be higher was not going to change anything. Like, I needed medicine. And so that was really helpful to me. And that was probably one of the biggest changes in 2020. Outside of that, fitness changed drastically, but for a different reason. So before, I took a hiatus from fitness because I was fatigued and my body needed to recover. But in 2020, I think I took a hiatus off of fitness because I just wasn't inspired. Like, I wasn't inspired. I think my body was finally figuring itself out. And I was like, do I really need to work out that much? Like, I think it got to the point where I was just like working out once a week, or not at all, or just, yeah, not at all, which was crazy because I was coming from a background, as we've talked about, of working out every day, 4 hours a day. So to get to the point where I wasn't really working out was really interesting for me. On top of that, the very real thing of like life gets in the way was happening for the first time. I was starting RCA, and the amount of effort it took to start this podcast and this platform was a lot. I took a lot of time between July and August just to focus on it, and I wasn't eating a lot, and therefore I didn't have energy. So I just like really had to choose what was a priority at the time, and working out wasn't a priority. Now I have learned how to balance that a little bit better, but like, you know, it's one of those things where it's like you have to figure things out for yourself. I swung from like, I work out all the time, I'm a fitness person, blah, 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 to like, I'm a couch potato, which I have a video on that, so I'll link that above, to now I'm like, okay, like we found like what works. So just if you're in that position, like understand you'll figure it out. And then in terms of basketball, I was shooting a little bit more. So I shot a little bit more that year and was really enjoying it. And I think part of me was like, I had flashbacks of my career and being like, maybe I should try basketball again. Like maybe I should think to go pro, all of those things. And it was then that I had to kind of come to the realization that I made the right decision for myself to not continue playing basketball. Like, it's okay to enjoy your sport and not want to play it competitively anymore, or to look back on your time in your sport and how elite you were and realize like that part of my life is behind me. That's perfectly fine and normal. And so that takes us to 2021 this year. And in terms of basketball, because I made that realization in 2020 that it's okay, I actually haven't shot too much anymore. I think I'm pretty comfortable in the fact that like I am a former basketball player. I don't play anymore. I'm probably not going to go into a league. I will get shots up from time to time. I will support my friends that are coaches and go to their games, and when necessary or when invited, give speeches to young athletes that are in basketball that are looking to go play in college. Love all of that, but I do not play anymore, and that's fine. I'm perfectly confident in my identity in that now, and when people ask about it, I can articulate why, and that's just kind of my truth now. Like, this is what I do, this is what I'm comfortable with, and eventually you will get to that point as well with your sport, where it won't be an uncomfortable conversation explaining, you won't feel the need to like share your whole story. It'll just be like, no, that's not what I do anymore, and this is what I do now. So you will definitely get to that point. Just give yourself time. The other thing for work is I have switched jobs again, and I am still working in an industry that I studied. So I'm in journalism, sports journalism specifically, and I love it. I finally feel like I'm being paid well, and I feel like I'm learning a lot, and it's definitely hard, but like I said, from 2017 to 2021, this is how long it's taken to get to this point of feeling comfortable in my career, where I took a road that was not at all what I studied to get to where I am now. And so this is just kind of an example of it's not linear. It's not linear. It's not going to be a direct line, but you will get to where you need to go as long as you have the vision for where you do want to go. So stick with it. In terms of workouts, I have made the effort to make an at-home gym. I know not everyone has the opportunity to do that, but I personally realized that like I don't want to travel to a gym to work out. I also don't love working out with other people, so that works out. I have an at-home gym to myself for the most part that I can use. I also realized that like I do love lifting, and so I will invest in the equipment necessary to do lifts at home that work for me, and that is a huge part of what I do enjoy. But also, I think my biggest thing here is I have just told myself that I need to work out 3 to 4 times a week. So I have a little checklist on a door that I walk by every single day, and I can highlight or check the days that I work out. But for me, I've made a promise to myself that I'll work out 3 to 4 times a week, just because that's how I want to honor and steward my body. And that's a decision that I've made for myself. For you, it doesn't have to be 3 to 4. It could be whatever you decide. But now it's coming from a healthy place, and I'm okay with putting a number on how many times I want to work out a week, because the intentions are pure. And then finally, my mental health. Mental health has been an ongoing thing for me, and I think like it is for a lot of people. It's changed from like basketball being the root of a lot of issues to just living life as a normal adult and having life happen. And so I still do see my psychiatrist. I am on medication, and it's super helpful. I will not always be on medication, but I did need those chemicals in my brain to reach a certain level to go up so that I can be at a healthy state. And I'm not necessarily there yet, but I feel a lot better, and that's good. I don't necessarily do counseling. I do it from time to time now, which I think is really helpful. And I'm glad I've gotten to the point where I can pick and choose when I need counseling. I don't feel like I need to have it on retainer. And I know a lot of people will say like, just have them there as a maintenance thing and whatever works for you. But at this point in time, I've realized that like when I get a counselor, I want to be covering a specific topic and get to an endpoint there. And then, you know, not drop them, but like stop counseling for some time until there's another thing that comes up like that. That is what works for me. But that's where I am now. I think that I'm in a much better place. I think that, there's still so much growth that needs to happen. I'm interested to see where my love for basketball goes, or if it changes, comes back, anything like that. I'm so glad that I am where I am in my fitness journey, in the sense of just having more pure intentions to steward my body well and not punish it and not have it look a specific way, but just like loving my body for what it is. And in terms of career, I feel like I'm in a decent spot now. Like I feel like my journey is making sense. Like what it took to get here is making sense. So I share all this just to kind of give some perspective for the retired college athlete, the up and coming, soon to be retired college athlete, the parents of that. Like this is definitely a journey. It takes time. There's so many things that are happening in your transition out of sport, and it never stops being a transition. That's what I realized. Like I will always be forever transitioning out of sport because that was such a huge part of my childhood. But the transition, while it can be hard, it's definitely worth the journey to get to these places of realization and loving yourself, loving your sport and aspects of your life again. And so I hope you found this helpful. And if you did, please consider hitting the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell notification so you don't miss a video from me. I post videos really similar to this talking about the college athletic experience and retired college athletes every Thursday, and I'd love to have you a part of this family. But with that said, that's all I have, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week. I'll talk to you guys next week.